Alright, for Sally, we need red, yellow, blue, black, and white. And we're going to start with our nice big fat brush, so it's about 1 inch. I like to get it wet before I start. Dry it off. We're going to start with some gray, so a little bit of black into the edge of your white. And we're going to start off just like we did Jack and create a sort of guideline oval. Doesn't have to be perfect, just giving you an idea of where the oval background is going to be. Feel free to position your canvas however you're comfortable. It could be on its side or portrait. And your brush strokes are going to follow that sort of oval shape or direction. From here we're going to paint the corners black. So just solid black. You're going to paint all 4 corners. Notice that I haven't created them solid yet. After this I'm going to paint the edges, so top, sides, and bottom, again so that I don't have to frame it. I can just hang it on the wall. There won't be that harsh contrast that touches the viewer's eyes. Just painting every edge all the way around. You can hold your canvas up for this, turn it on its side, whatever you need to get all the edges completed. Don't forget the bottom. Sometimes gets neglected because you don't see it. And again, you can hold this up, get that completed, or just turn it onto the side. Make those edges solid black. completed, then we're going to start to create that nice little fade away from dark to light. So I'm going to put another coat of the black on the corners so that the paint is wet. And then I will continue working my way in with lighter paint and getting lighter and lighter as I move into the oval. The trick to creating blends is that both paints are wet, the paint on the canvas and the paint that you're adding to it. So if you want that nice fade or transition as opposed to a harsh edge, make sure that both paints are wet. I'm just going in with some nice light gray. Notice that when I go over the black portion, it does kind of create that nice little fade for me. So it's a nice easy transition as opposed to just a harsh line. So if you're getting a harsh line or harsh edge, you just need to re-wet the black paint. I'm using nice light gray and a little bit of white on my brush at the same time. I don't like to stir it up too much. I just like to kind of allow the paint to mix on the canvas. And if your paint isn't quite covering as much as you'd like, there's a couple tricks. You could just not be using quite enough paint, so don't be scared to shovel it on there. If you want to cover up the texture of the canvas, you can get your brush a little bit wet, shake off the excess, and then paint over those areas, and it should fill in the little texture marks. You do not have to do that. You can leave that if you like the way that it looks. This is your painting. You should love and cherish it and do what you desire. All right, so we're just going to work our way in using that white and gray paint and just getting lighter and lighter as we move all the way into the center. dark, just grab some white paint, go right over it. Paint is actually very forgiving, so anything that you create, we can always change up as we move along. Brush strokes in the direction of the oval, and just cleaning up any little marks that might not be quite where you want them or how you want them, using that gray and white paint. Switch to the larger pointed brush. We're going to start to lay Sally out. So I'm going to use a nice light gray, a little bit darker than my background so that I can see it. And we're just going to lay her out so that we can make adjustments with the gray paint. A little bit of black paint into the white. Centered, it's a little off center, and we're just going to kind of create a nice big circle. This is where you can make adjustments. So notice I'm just kind of sketching the circle out, making it bigger where I need it bigger and smaller where I need it smaller. Don't worry, all of this will be covered up with Sally as we move forward. Represents sort of the neck to torso. So it's just going to be a guideline of her body coming down from the neckline. And it has a slight curve because she is sort of looking up and over at Jack. So I'm going to come down from the center of the circle, have a nice little curve. So this represents her midline. Now her neck is wider than that, so I'm going to widen up the neck on either side. Sally does have quite a nice long neck. And then we're going to create her shoulder. So slight angle. The left shoulder will be down a little bit from the right shoulder. And just align the right shoulder a little bit shorter than the left because the left one's closer to us. And then for the shoulder, we're going to create sort of a bell shape right here. This will become her sleeve later on. And then I'm just going to give a guideline of where the right shoulder will come down. Most of that will be covered up later on. It's just kind of a guideline of where it ends. So at the bottom of the bell shape, you're going to have little ripples or tears. Remember, Sally creates her own dresses. And then for the arm, it's going to come at is going to come up and across the body. So a little bit more of a diagonal. And it's going to meet her hand. So the hand, don't think of it as a hand, think of it as sort of a organic rectangle, if you will. And just kind of laying out that shape. So we have a little bit of a rectangle. Now what happened here, I'm not quite happy with that, so I'm going to take my background colors and I'm just going to erase my first attempt at my hand. So if your first attempt isn't quite right, very easily can just become part of the background again. That's why we're using the gray paint to layer out. And as you can see, that first attempt has now disappeared. Alright, take two. Find that diagonal and approximately where I want that hand to be. So it's a little bit of a curve for the forearm, and then we're going to transform that curve into sort of a rectangle with a thumb. The hand. Okay, so I'm going to place the hand, nice little curve, that's the thumb. Okay, and then from the thumb, I'm going to come up and then sort of rectangle shape there. Doesn't have to be perfect right now, just kind of the layout. As you can see, it's not anatomically correct. Needs to be in the right spot. So she has sort of a V-neck in her dress. So we're going to come from either side of the neck and come down to a point. This can be adjusted as well. I think I adjusted a few times during the painting. Just comes from either side of the neck, and the point kind of comes down to the center of the torso. So the skin color is going to cover the entire head, neck, neckline, and arm. So remember, this is the first coat. We're just putting it on there, seeing if we like it. Felt like it was a little too bright, so I'm grabbing some white paint, going right over that, lightening it up. Also, when I'm filling in these shapes, I'm following the form. So if it's a curved, round form, my brush strokes are going to be rounded and curved. If it's a straight form, then my brush strokes will be more straight and rigid. Fill in the circle completely and a nice even coat of paint. Variation in color is okay. Actually gives it a little character. And then we're going to go ahead and fill in the neck and the arm as well. In the brush, easily covered up, filled in. Don't worry if that happens. Like I said, paint is very forgiving. Just give it a little rinse, and then we'll get back to filling it filling in that space, and then also that neckline that we created within her dress will also be that green, bluish green color. I am using my largest brush here. If this brush doesn't work for you, feel free to try a different one. The smaller flat brush works nicely as well. Just getting into some of those smaller areas, you might change up your brush here and there. Don't think you have to use the same brush as me. And then moving on to the arm, so we're gonna fill in that funky hand, forearm, and a little bit of the arm below the sleeve. More blue into that mixture and fill that in if you like it. And just being okay if there's variation in color. Having variation actually gives you a little more volume and depth, and just one solid color kind of flattens out the look. I'm gonna adjust my hand just a little bit. I feel like it's just a little bit too big, so I'm taking some white paint. Do make sure that the green or bluish green skin color is dry before you do this. Otherwise it will mix into the background. Taking those background colors, just kind of covering it up, reshaping it just a little bit. It was just a little bit too big. Again, paint is very forgiving, and you can erase just by using a different color there. Okay, I'll probably have to put a couple more coats in those areas just to give it full coverage, but know that you can adjust if needed. Anywhere you need a little adjusting. Adjusting the shape of the arm, the shape of the hand just a little bit. Don't want to lose that thumb. About finding the form and finding the shape, making adjustments as you go whenever you notice them. And remember to be fearless in your mark making. Filled in, we're gonna work on the dress a little bit. So her sleeve is green, which is gonna be yellow and blue. I like to make a nice dark blue. I am using my larger flat brush again, but if that one doesn't work for you, try the smaller one or even the pointed one on this one. And this first coat, especially the green and on the dress, it's gonna be very streaky. You're gonna be able to see the brush strokes. That's totally fine. We'll put 3 or 4 coats of color into the sleeve and into the dress. So just allow that first coat to be what it is. Don't get too crazy with it, because we'll be making lots of adjustments as we go. Alright, for the dress, we're going to create some brown. Brown is one of those colors that's kind of difficult to mix, but just stick with it. It'll come to you. I start with red and yellow, about equal parts of red and yellow, and then I add just the tiniest bit of blue at a time. So a nice sort of dark orange, and then just even the corner of my paintbrush in blue at a time, barely any. You'll see that the blue changes the color very, very quickly. If it looks green, you need to add more red. It's purple, you need to add more yellow, and just kind of play around with that ratio until you find that brown that you like. The blue will make it darker. So if you find brown and it's not quite dark enough, just add a little bit of blue, a little bit more blue, and then we're just going to fill in the rest of her dress with brown. Remembering that this is the first coat, it probably is going to be very streaky, getting into some smaller parts, so you might want to use a smaller brush, finding that brush control. And again, just not worrying too much about how streaky and brush strokey it is right now. With some of the colors, it takes a few coats to get that nice coverage. And we'll be making those adjustments as we go through the painting. out the hair. So we're going to switch to the larger pointed brush. And we're going to make some red, adding a little bit of white into it. Just adding that white helps it be less transparent. Red by itself is very transparent, at least with this paint. So just a little bit of white. We're going to start to lay out our hair. So from center of the head, we're going to come down, kind of a S curve, comes off the head, down and around the shoulder. And then from the center towards the opposite direction, this comes off the head and around somewhere near the shoulder or into the hand. Nice little curved lines. Then I'm going to switch back to my large brush. Fill this in with that red. It's going to be very streaky. Again, this is our first coat. It's going to look flat and not quite right. Don't worry about that. Try to be fearless in your mark making. Still following the form or following the way the hair falls as your brush strokes. And just adding a touch of white into that red paint. Filling it in right up against the neck, the shoulders, the hand, the head. Just filling it all in. We'll add some shadows and detail to it later. But for now, we just want to get that first coat of red on. Don't forget you have other brushes. This brush is not quite working for you or you get into some small little areas. Go ahead and change or switch up your brush. Now, as I was filling in the hair, I noticed that we probably need a little bit of her back down on this side. So you kind of follow the shoulder line, comes down and through, and I'll paint that part brown instead of the red of the hair. Probably have a little bit of that brown left. Remember her back is kind of arched or kind of curved. And we'll just fill in that little space. So this next coat that I'm going to put on, I'm going to mix some more blue into the mixture, so it's a little less green, and then some more white, so it's kind of a little bit lighter in color as well. So I'm just playing with my color over here on my palette, finding in the side of this white a nice light bluish color, maybe turquoise color, and you'll see it's much lighter than my original. And I'm just going to cover that entire skin area once again with this new skin tone, Sally tone. Skin tone. Same thing applies on this second coat. Just following the form, filling in the shapes, and just finding that nice skin tone that you like. Because this is our second coat, we can be a little more precise and deliberate with our brush strokes. So smoothing out any areas or brush strokes that we don't want or don't like. And really definitely following the form. Creating that variation. Maybe some areas are a little bit darker, some areas a little bit lighter, and that's okay. Maybe under the chin it's a little bit darker because it's casting a shadow. Maybe on the left side of the arm it might be a little darker. Underneath that sleeve. And not being scared to just go for it. If you put some paint on there and it feels like it's a little too dark in that area, just take some white paint, go right over it. It's going to pick up that paint and blend it in. Back up to the head for a bit and just add in maybe some brush strokes that kind of follow the nose line or the cheekbone or where the eyes are going to be. Just kind of broad shapes that blend into the surface, so I'm not creating shapes, they're just kind of following the form. So just like we follow the form when we're filling in any little areas, just kind of follow around the nose and the eyes, just giving it a little more oomph, a little more depth. Maybe even playing with a little bit of color here and there. Tried some yellow. Didn't really like it. Tried to cover it up. So again, I can always just go back, add some more color in. make that you really, really like, and it was just an experiment at first. I'm just going to continue filling in the skin tone, second coat. Again, I did change that color just a bit because she was just too green for me. And then just working through filling in that second coat. Work it until you like it. Don't be scared to have more than one color on your brush at the same time for variation of color. And just, follow that form. Face dry just a bit. I like to use my pinky for stabilization. And her eyes are just two big almonds. Kind of just lay them out there, knowing that you can make adjustments if needed. White is actually the easiest color to cover up or change. Two nice big almonds just right on the eyeball area. Once you get the shape laid out, then you're going to fill them in completely with white. There's going to be a lot of streaks. It's not going to give you full coverage. Again, that is okay. We'll be doing 3 or 4 coats of white. I like to use my flat brushes when I do my filling. I feel like it has a nice smoother brush stroke. implication of the nose. So I am using the skin tone, the blue. I'm just coming down from sort of the eyebrow onto the bridge of the nose, and then making maybe a little triangular-ish shape at the bottom. Maybe rounded triangle, you could say. Imply that there's a little nose there. Okay, then we'll go in and maybe add a few little darker areas for shadow. So this is mostly blue paint, just a teeny tiny bit. And then I'm brushing it through and continuing to use my brush until it disappears, kind of scribbling with my brush, giving that left side of the head a little darker tone to it. This is just the tiniest bit of blue paint on my brush. I'm even wiping off the excess of it. And then we'll go back in and lay out the bridge of the nose again. And it doesn't have to be a nose shape. It's just the implication of a little bit of a shadow to give it some definition. Okay, from here, we're going to put a second coat of white on the eyes. Like I said, we're going to be doing 4, probably even 5 coats of white on the eyes, just to give them solid coverage. Nice thin coat. You do want to give some drying time in between coats. If you try to put a second coat on wet paint, it kind of just moves the paint around as opposed to giving you a nice full coverage coat. Flat brush here, and I'm going to put a second coat on the shoulder and the dress. I'm just moving through in the same order that we did in the first coat. Okay, so following that form, second coat's going to give you a little more coverage. It's going to look a lot better. Okay, but again, we are going to be adding another coat after this. So if it's not perfect this time, it's okay. Noticing that my second coat still has some streaks, still has some brush strokes that I'm going to want to make disappear, and those will eventually disappear with our third and fourth coats. So just keep making those fearless marks, working through second coat on everything. Continue. second coat on the hair, I have added a little bit of black into my red. So now it's a sort of a nice deeper tone of red. And I'm going to kind of sort of lay out her bones, if you will, or the overlapping part of her hair. And that comes into the forehead a bit. Coming down to the left and then to the right. Notice that the shape comes across and all the way to the edge of the original shape that we created. Okay, also creating that little part in her hair. Having a little bit of black mixed into the red gives you that sort of deeper tone so you can see where you're adding the marks. And of course, always following the shape of the hair. The way the hair falls or flows is the direction your brushstroke should go. Overlay laid out. Now I'm going to add a little bit more black to my red so it's a little bit darker, and I'll put the second coat on the underside of the hair. We do want this to be darker because this is behind or in between the front of the hair and the back. That's what's going to give you that nice depth and allow the overlapping hair to look like it is coming forward. I'm using my small flat brush again here, but as usual, if you prefer a different brush, go for that. The small flat brush happens to be my favorite. I use it as much as possible, but I still do give some love to the other brushes every once in a while. Continue to fill in this little bit darker version of red on the underside of the hair. Following the form, following the shape, and not paying attention to those visible brush strokes. Not just yet. We will have time for that later on. So any of my little OCD peeps out there, just tell Mr. OCD to go away for a little bit and come back later when we do our details. Let the eyes dry in between coats, and we'll be doing quite a few coats of the white. little bit of paint on the brush allows for soft, subtle highlights. Barely touch the surface of the canvas. Maybe add a little bit of blue if it's too light. And just giving that form a little more definition. Going back to that variation of color, that's how you get the illusion of dimension, darkest dark to lightest light, and everything in between. I noticed that my hairline was a little bit off, so I'm going to make some adjustments now. So I'm mixing some more of that skin color, Sally skin color, I should say. And I'm just going to reshape the part of the hair. And I'll need to do a couple of coats of this as well. Getting that first initial reshaping in there. I might have to try to blend in the color just a bit. Pulling it down. And then I'll put an extra coat over that as we go. Some of that skin color, skin tone that I created, kind of blending it in and adding it to the surface of the face. We want to get everything just as you want it, so we can start adding some of those fine details. Go ahead and just put another little coat onto that adjustment that I made. Just remembering that anytime you create something, you can always make adjustments as you go. Don't be too attached to the first mark. Allow the marks to happen and adjust as needed. And just remember, when you do adjustments, you probably have to create 2 or 3 coats to cover up any dark things that you're trying to cover. And also mixing the colors together when you're doing this, so not just using the color out of the bottle. Actually mixing it with white or mixing it with another color will help with the opaqueness of the paint. before you add any extra details. So we'll still be putting another coat of color on top of our parts, but starting to make those adjustments is a good time right now. So I am once again reshaping the hand just a bit, still a little too big, so I'm covering that up with that background color, gray and white, and then I'll pull the hair down just a bit as well. Brush now to bring my hair down to the new version of my hand. Okay, and then don't forget that pinky trick. You can use your pinky as a stabilizer. You can also hold your hand with your other hand, if that helps. But the background and most of the painting is pretty dry now, so you can actually touch it while you're painting on it. And while I'm at it, doing these little adjustments and tinkerings, one more coat onto that hairline, just to give it a nice clean look, nice full coverage, just a few little spots that are still peeking through. Some extra coat find the right angle. So I'm using that skin tone again and just kind of pulling open the neckline, that V-neck. Pulling it down just a little bit and adjusting the shape on the sides. Adjustments is now, before you add any of those fine details onto the surface of your projects. That's just a dry brush, or no paint brush I should say. Kind of blending in and taking in some of that paint, moving it around so that it all becomes one. Down to the dress now. Just mixing a little more of that brown so I have enough for full coverage. And I'm also going to stir in just a little bit of white into the brown. Make sure you get brown first before you add any white to it. It is very difficult to mix brown with white involved. And it's going to be a little bit lighter, a little bit brighter. The nice dark tone of the brown underneath is going to give it a nice rich color and have that variation. And if it's too light or too bright, just mix in a little bit more of those colors, darken it back up, find the brown that you like, and then we'll add that fourth or fifth coat. creating the ruffles of the sleeve, or the tears of the sleeve, if you will, and just kind of shaping them and making them exactly as I'd like them to be. So using that pointed brush is going to give you the freedom to shape the bottom of the sleeve. Let's just our green paint, so yellow and blue. Maybe the tear was too long or too big. You can always add some skin tone back on there and reshape the ruffles and rips. Add some more green onto the sleeve, maybe a little bit of white mixed into there as well. Gives it some highlight. And just covering up a little dark area of the hand. Where the knuckles were was a little darker than I had wanted. So lightening that up. Blending in, pulling down the color, just making sure everything is just how I'd like it to be. Check your eyes, see if they need another coat. And we'll put another coat of that white paint onto the eyes. Now it's time to start adding some of those details. So I have some red and white paint. I'm using my smallest pointed brush. We're going to start with the lips. Okay, so remember touch, don't push. I'm using my pinky to stabilize. And the lips are just under the nose. We're going to start with 2 small little mountains. And then we have a nice sort of flattened U shape underneath. So a nice curve shape underneath on the bottom side. Once you get that lip shape, then you're going to fill it in with the color. This is a light version of the lips. Adding that white in gives me coverage over the skin tone. And later on our second and third coats, we can use the nice deeper red or bright red, depending on what color you'd like her lips to be today. As you'd like them to be. Her lips aren't too big, they're kind of small. But again, this is your painting. You can make her lips as big or small as you'd like them to be. Is to mix more water into my black paint. So if you just dip in the water, bring that water to the paint and kind of stir in just a little bit of paint at a time until you have a nice flowy, more liquidy paint. You don't want it to be drippy, but you want it to be a little more liquidy. This will give you a nice flowing paint. Then we want to rinse our brush, get it back to a nice point, and we're going to use that watered down paint, and we're just going to barely touch. So using that touch don't push technique, we're going to start adding some of those stitching details. Just getting a tiny bit of paint at a time, using a stabilizing method of your choice, maybe your pinky or your hand. And we're going to start to add some outlines and some stitching. So don't think of your outline as necessarily needing to outline everything. Think of it more as anywhere you need a little oomph or separation. A little part that needs to be defined. And your outline can get thicker and thinner. It does not have to be the same thickness. It can go in and out and disappear and reappear. And using that sort of watered down paint is going to give you a longer line or a longer flow of paint. So you won't have to get paint as often. And you can be very deliberate here. So all of your marks now, you want to spend time and consciously create them. And on the right side of the dress, adding some little spirals, little design. skills to create her beautiful attire, and so we want to give it some character. Just a little bit of paint there, and then use your finger. You can kind of rub it or wipe it down away, and it'll give you like a fade away. Nice little trick to create a shadow. And we'll start adding some of those stitch marks, so where the sleeve meets the dress. Just little diagonal marks that cross over the seam. And then maybe using that shadow technique under the sleeve as well. So when I do under the sleeve, I'm using just a teeny bit of blue paint instead of the black to kind of match the skin tone. Then I'll use my finger to rub away or sort of spiral the paint to look more like a shadow. Just the tiniest bit of paint goes a very long way when you're creating shadows. You can always add more, but it's hard to take away. And back to outlining, finding my definitions, finding my parts that need a little more oomph. Where the thumb and hand meet, you can add a little extra line that comes down just a little further than where the thumb comes out. That will give some definition. And then on the knuckles, be sure not to outline them completely or make thicker and thinner lines, just so they're not so overpowering. Start to make some of her stitch marks that are actually on her arms. And I just curved line that comes from either side but doesn't go all the way across. And then you can create a couple of those little X's, diagonal marks. And then she has one that comes down the center of the neck as well. You can always add more water to your paint as needed. Just make sure you rinse your brush, get it back to its nice point before you go back to the detailing. I'm going to add another coat of red onto the lips. This time I'm using just pure red to make it nice and bright. Here's a little close-up detail of the stitch marks. So coming down from the center of the neck, down the neckline, and the collarbone lines. And then adding some of those stitch marks. So again, not all X's. Some just kind of cross over each other. Some do create X's. Just depends on where you're at, what you're looking for. And we're going to start on the eye. So remember, touch, don't push. I'm going to give her top lid a nice little sort of thicker outline. So I am actually pressing into the canvas for that one. So start with a light touch at the corners, and then as you come across the eye, you push down, it gets a little bit thicker, and then release as you pull away. That'll give you a nice tapered line. These are going to sort of represent her eyelashes. Don't feel like you have to make one line. Lines can meet each other, or you can go in different directions. You can turn your canvas. And now we're going to just create this little line that comes down from the right eye, kind of curves around the bridge of the nose. Just a very small detail, just to imply that the nose is there. And then a little teardrop for a nostril. Very, very light touch here. Touch, don't push. Barely any paint on your brush. You can get that idea of the nose. Apologize for the camera angle here. I'm adding a small line to just above the original eye. Eyelashes. Yay, that we finally get to see. And they're just V's. So just V's coming off that top lid. She's starting to come together. Now for the second eye, I'm actually going to turn my canvas just to make it a little easier. Sometimes one side is easier than the other. So turning the canvas to adjust will make it easier for you. So doing that top lid again, same thing. Very light touch to start with. Push down towards the middle to make it thicker, and then pull away as you come to the end. also add a little, very small line just above that lid line before we add the lashes. Just barely touching. So much so that sometimes it goes in and out. And then we have a little V-shaped eyelashes. Sally has a stitch across the forehead as well. Kind of comes down from the part and behind the eye. So just creating that guideline and then adding your stitch marks. And one on the cheek as well. Adjust as needed. Just barely touch the canvas here and have very, very, very little paint on your brush. We don't want these to be overpowering. They're just implying her smile and her stitched mouth. Stitch marks on there as well. Remember, diagonals and X's kind of combined. They don't have to all be X's. And they're diagonal in different directions as well. Kind of random. You don't want to create a pattern there. The lips. This time I'm going to add just a touch of black into my red. Give me that nice sort of deep red tone for the lips. Very little black. I still want the color to be red. I just want it to have a little more richer tone to it. Maybe even play around with a little bit of lighter color, lighter pink in the lips as well, but just kind of adding them as subtle little highlights. And the good thing about the lips is you can continue to play with them until they are just as you'd like them to be. So if it's too light, add some darker color back over it. If it's too dark, add some light color over it. If it gets a little crazy, let it dry and cover it back up. Remember, paint is very forgiving. I probably sound like a broken record, but I promise. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the pupils. So I like to do them in light gray first, just to make sure they're positioned where I'd like them to be. So just a little bit of gray paint. And it's just going to be a little circle. So Sally is meant to be displayed with Jack's mending heart. So she is looking over at Jack in a loving way. So we want to angle her or aim her eyes towards the left. that light gray because sometimes you might add something in and then it's not quite where you want it to be. So what do? We can make an adjustment. Now on this eye, I didn't like the positioning. So since I just did it, the paint is still wet. So what I can do is I can actually wipe away the paint. So I'm using the corner of my towel that has a little bit of moisture on it still. And you don't want to just wipe away. You want to kind of dab it, pick it up, and not necessarily wipe all the way across the canvas. Now the eye is dry, most everything is dry, so it's just going to wipe away that wet paint. And then we can just put, if there's any leftover residue, just put a little coat of white right over that, and then we can recreate or reposition that pupil. So now that I have a nice clean eye again, I can reposition where I put the pupil. Make sure I like it. Once you are happy with the positioning of the pupils, then you can paint them black. Color to the lips. Just want to get those lips just as you'd like them to be. So I am adding a little bit more of that bright red. Playing around with that. And now it's time to add our rose. So I'm going to switch to my larger pointed brush. And when I do the rose, it is so it's a black rose, so I'm going to use black and white paint. I'm going to have some gray paint, white paint, and black paint on my brush all at the same time. And I'm going to start to create some ruffles. So ruffle circles that kind of form around each other. Just like when you were little and you were drawing flowers, that's what we want to do. So kind of a little spiral in the center and then some ruffles around. And as you can see, I just kind of create those little curved U marks all around, grabbing sometimes black paint, sometimes white paint, sometimes black and white paint. Just playing around with those marks until I find a rose. Don't be scared. It'll be okay, I promise. You can always add more ruffles on later. If the paint starts to just move around and it's not necessarily making marks for you anymore, then let it dry for a bit and come back to it. So the stem comes down just in between the thumb and the knuckles, and then out the bottom. That's just my black paint. A little bit of white here and there. There might be some variations of grays and blacks. Some leaves. So from that base of the rose, I'm going to press down with my brush and press into the canvas, and I'm going to pull in the direction of the leaf, and as I'm pulling in the direction of the leaf, I'm pulling away from the canvas. So it's a push into the canvas and then pull away as you create the leaf. And that's going to give you that nice tapered in, that little point at the end. And you can go in and add some little highlights, so some white paint, just to make it pop after you create that initial shape of the leaf. Don't be scared to play around here. Having both colors on your brush is a good idea, so the white and the black at times. It's going to create some blends and marks without much effort. Alright, moving back to my fine brush, so the smallest pointed brush. We're going to go ahead and fill in my pupils. Top lid, thicken up the eyelash area. Just gives that connection, makes it feel complete. Close to that where the cheek meets the hair area. Add a few brush strokes of black. And they will look like hairlines or hair. Very little paint here. And I'm just moving the paint until it doesn't move anymore onto the canvas. So just a tiny bit. Just pulling that down in the direction of the hair. And we do want to give that hair a couple little details as well. So maybe just some part lines, hair lines, following the shape of the hair. So the direction of the hair is the direction of the brush strokes. Just the smallest amount of definition. Maybe one of your outlines got a little out of hand. Just take some of that color. So I mix some red and black again. Just gonna kind of make that little part of that outline a little less thick. Okay, we're on the home stretch. Just adding any little finishing details that you feel like you need. Maybe a few stitches here and there, maybe some hairlines, maybe some highlights. Don't be scared to play with the colors. back to the lips for some outlining. So very, very small marks here. We're just going to just give it a little subtle outline. And then for the middle line, go through a straight line. Has a small down curve in the middle, and then it goes and reaches to the corners. So just right there is just a very small curve, and then goes straight to the corners, and then the bottom lip. So just a little dot. So a dot kind of on the same side on both of them. And that's the highlight. So that brings her to life. As soon as you add that, it just brings her to life. Maybe a little highlight on the lips. Might spend some time with the lips like I do. I like to just get them just as I like them to be. So it might be some adjusting and repainting, but that's okay. While on the home stretch, just adding in any of those finishing details that you might need. Your last and final step will be to sign it and claim your mark. You can sign it first name, last name, first and last name, nickname, initials. You can be the artist formerly known as whatever symbol you have become. Traditional place to sign it is the bottom right hand corner. You can sign it anywhere you want, however you want, in whatever color you want. And remember, touch, don't push on that signature. Thank you so much for